Pleasure, privilege to introduce our next speaker and for her testimony. And I just want to say, if there's anyone in the house today that is believing for a miraculous healing in your body, this word is for you. Pastor Gayle Garcia.
Thanks, Kimberly and Deborah. Oh my goodness, honey. I feel like she's like a niece or something to me because I've known her and her family since she was a little girl. And look what God did with her, right? So my friend Joycelyn asked me to come tell you my cancer testimony. So first of all, let me start with I had scans, oscopies, labs, everything you can imagine. There was never anything. And this went on for a few years, you know. They were looking suspicious. As you get older, we get suspicious, right? And nothing. So then on Easter Sunday of last year, Easter Sunday, you know that day where by His stripes we are healed? On Easter Sunday of last year, I started having symptoms. But we were having Easter dinner with my family, our adult children, and I didn't want to go to the hospital. So I hung out at the house and I waited till Monday, and the symptoms continued and even worsened. And so I asked my sweet husband, I said, would you mind taking me to ER? And he's like, not at all, what's going on? So he rushed me to ER, and I don't want to talk about the symptoms because it's not for polite society, whatever you want to call it. But so I get there and they triage me and they go, we need to get you in the back because what's going on is not okay. I'm like, all right. So they put me in the back and they said, we got to do an MRI. We don't know what's going on. We have to see. So they do the MRI and they said, oh, there's something going on. We need further testing. We're going to admit you. They put me in the hospital. The next day they do a colonoscopy. Ever had one of those? Wow. Not fun. So they came back after that, and I was so hungry, and they wouldn't let me eat because they said, you have to have surgery. You have cancer. So here's the weird thing. When people come up to you and say you have, a doctor comes up to you and says you have cancer, there's fear, right? I had absolutely none. This was not on my own power, honestly. I didn't even know this was coming, so I wasn't even praying about it. But God simply removed my fear. I had no fear. My husband and my son were train wrecks. They were crying. I told them, snap out of it. I'm not dying. So they go in and they do the surgery, right? I get out, and this was kind of funny. I just want to tell you because it's kind of funny. I had a pretty serious surgery because there were complications, and so the incision was fairly large. And so I was kind of loopy from the anesthesia, and I look down and I see this wide strip of silver tape going down my abdomen, and I'm like, that looks like duct tape. I'm thinking, I really do use this stuff for everything? Like, it wasn't. It was some kind of surgical tape. I don't know, but just when I first looked at it, right? It's like, what are they doing? So they came in after the surgery, and they said, well, the good news is we got all the cancer. We got it all. The back, it was in one of your lymph nodes. And because of that, it's stage 3B, and after the surgery, you're going to need to have chemo. I still had no fear. I said, okay. So I don't know if any of you in here have been through chemo or have known someone who's gone through chemo. It's bad stuff. It's bad stuff. So they did labs and scans right before I left the hospital just to make sure they'd gotten all the cancer, and it was all gone, no evidence of cancer. And I knew that God had already healed me. I just knew. I was willing to go through the chemo as an abundance of caution, but I was healed and I knew it. So it took them about 2 months to get me set up for the chemo. I had to get a port put in, and I had to see my oncologist. And right before I went in for my first round of chemo, they did more labs. 2 months later, 2 more labs and more scans, still no cancer. It's all gone. So I start the first round of chemo. It's not too bad. I have the stereotypical side effects. I've got nausea, fatigue, hair loss, weight loss. That's kind of okay with the weight loss. Just saying. A little bit okay with that. And the scary part of it was the neuropathy. So the neuropathy is very severe. I don't know if you've ever had it, but it's nerve damage to your hands and feet, and it can become permanent. That was my concern. And so the first round wasn't too bad. I was doing kind of okay with it. They gave me medicine to counteract the side effects. And so I get the chemo, the IV, and then I take chemo pills for 3 weeks, and then I'd be off for a week, and I'd start feeling better, and then I go in for the second round of chemo. I was supposed to have a total of 5. Well, by the second round, My neuropathy was so severe. My hands and feet turned deep beet red. They swelled up and they started blistering and peeling. In addition to that, I had that tingling when your foot falls asleep. I had that on top of it, and I was in such bad shape. I couldn't walk. The whole bottom of my foot was one giant blister. I couldn't walk. I could take like very tentative little steps, holding my husband's arm, and my hands were so bad I couldn't open and twist the cap off a bottle of water. And all this time still, I knew that God had healed me. So I'm laying on the couch one day, and I wasn't really praying. I was just kind of trying to take myself out of my pain and get to another place, kind of. And I was meditating on God, and I was just laying there with my eyes closed, thinking about God and His goodness and His will. And I was raised in church, so I heard, we're the body of Christ. In my head, I heard, we're God's hands and feet on earth. We're God's hands and feet on earth. We're God's hands and feet on earth. And I suddenly just knew that I needed to stop the chemo. I'm not giving anyone advice on how to handle your situation or your health, but I knew God was speaking to me. So I waited till my husband got home, and I said, I think I need to stop the chemo. I made it through 2 rounds, but this is bad. And he said, oh, okay, for those of you who know, he's the sweetest man alive. And that's kind of what I need. So I went and I talked to my oncologist, and he said, well, I don't recommend it, but you have control of your own health care. Okay. So in the interim, I stopped chemo, I started getting better, my hair started growing back, I started feeling like myself again. The blistering and swelling on my hands and feet went down. And in the interim, we switched insurance, so I had to go to a new oncologist. She was great, and I was telling her my history of this particular cancer, and I was telling her my family history. So my mother passed from cancer. 2 of my mom's 3 sisters passed from cancer. Both of her brothers passed from cancer. My sister and my brother, 2 of my siblings, passed from cancer. She said, well, you have such a strong history of cancer in your family. I want to do a test for DNA, cancer markers in your DNA. And I was like, wow, you could do that? That's amazing, right? So she took the blood test and she sent it off, and a couple weeks later I had to go back into her office for something. And she said, we got those labs back on your DNA. There's no cancer markers. And that's great. And then I kind of laughed to myself, because my mom was very shy and soft-spoken. I'm not really a lot like her. I'm much more like my dad. And so I kind of said, kind of jokingly, I said, well, I guess I just have more of my dad's DNA. And the nurse said, well, it's highly unusual for you to not have cancer markers from your mitochondrial DNA. It's highly unusual. So as I'm driving home that day, and I'm thinking, it's not my dad's DNA. It's my father's. You know that place in Psalms where it says, He knit me together in my mother's womb? In that moment, He removed my generational curse. So not only did He heal me some 60-some years ago, right? But He healed me in the here and now, too. And so I just want to tell you, in John, the book of John, it says, in this world there will be trouble, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. Right? The same day, the Easter Sunday, that He gave me the symptoms so they could find the cancer soon enough so that it didn't move to stage 4, so that I didn't have to have the full set of chemo treatments. The same day that by His stripes we are healed is the same day that He overcame the world. And I just have to tell you, I believe for every single one of us, especially those who are struggling with something physical today, that once we become saved and we accept Christ, victory is the only outcome for us. Because now we have our Father's DNA. Today, standing before you 1 year later, I am still cancer-free. Amen. That was good, right?